So you can sit in transmission, have dreams of transmission, feel transmission, have your mind stop, but then the next moment you can go and identify with anybody else's mind who's seeking conventionally in all the, special me, victim me ideas of fulfillment and experience. You can hook up with those minds again. And when you hook up with those minds, the holes in your subtle physical that you have get bigger. They tear open more. I'm trying to give you a metaphor to understand that transmission has a job. It's a force. But if there's all holes in your subtle physical, and those holes come from you identifying with belief systems that reinforce a separate self, the contraction. So that knots up the body-mind. So when you believe somebody's ideas about a separate one and how to get fulfilled, or that you're a victim in experience, or you're a hero, or they're a victim, or they're a hero, if you believe any of that, it tears the subtle. And the subtle being torn, transmission, force, just goes out. Just dissipates to nothing. So that's your job. So that's why you have to go to work and do the practice. You have to always be doing the practice. When I was doing my sadhana and I was at school, I encountered all these minds seeking in art. I saw it going on. I saw the beliefs. I didn't hook up. I was detached. I did my work. I wasn't home traumatized by all their beliefs and all their seeking or all their personalities. Then the ups and downs of their personality. Why? There wasn't holes in my subtle, see? I wasn't draining out the transmission. And so at night, when I met my teacher, or saw my teacher in the subtle, or in dreams, or physically, the transmission that they are would continue to deepen in me. And the force of that would unlock all the knots in the body-mind. And as all the knots loosened and undid, no mind and all the seeking mind and all the beliefs that everyone had that reinforced this separate self-sense, none of it could touch my mind. My mind was untouched now. My mind wasn't going around sucking it up and somehow buying into it and believing it and feeling like really terrible afterwards. Mm-hmm. So that's sadhana, see? That's sadhana. How do you get there? That's the real sadhana. What you're doing is what? Kind of a preparation for it, but you never stop preparing the way you're preparing. Why? Because you think this preparation period is somehow the sadhana. Mm-hmm. It isn't the sadhana yet. It's the preparation for sadhana. So you think you can stay here and somehow my transmission is going to catch you on fire somehow. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work that way. It's not going to catch you on fire. Mm-hmm. In fact, you've been caught on fire and doused it out yourself several times already. You keep dousing it out. Some of you had more capacity to come into the fire and get ignited years ago than you have now. How's that happen?
Too much preparation.
Too much preparation. That's not really...
Too much of that bad.
Well, you're identifying the preparation as the real process when it's not. See? Rama used to talk about that. Remember, he said, this process deepens if the first attention and the second attention are lined up. So in other words, what is going on internally, subtly, should agree with what's going on externally. So, people are always thinking and acting in a way that's contrary to what you see. Right? Or vice versa, They're always saying something and giving you a perception that they're not acting on, but they really want you to believe it. And so when you just line up, so when I was doing my sadhana, it was lined up that way. So when any mind came and said, believe this, do this is happiness, recognize this as, important or special, it just would fall off me. Nothing could move me out of that position. So that's locating happiness or consciousness. When you can't be moved out of that position. And everywhere you go, you see what? People playing out the game in the separate one. And it doesn't stop you. It doesn't mess you up. Doesn't screw you up. So if a really handsome guy comes in the room, you don't have to start thinking about resisting that somehow he wants to have sex with you, because why?
Doesn't touch.
It doesn't touch you. It's just a guy in the room. If people are trying to get famous for music or art in the room, it doesn't have to affect you. You don't have to go anywhere. When the Buddha was sitting under the tree, first, the hallucinations came to take him away from his meditation on the divine. And they were terrible. So the first kind of thoughts are all scared, scary stuff. But as it went, the most beautiful maidens tried to seduce him and everything. And those were the higher thoughts. Whatever is beautiful and pleasurable in life are the higher thoughts. And he stayed in his meditation. And so all the hallucination of how you can be fulfilled, broke. He remained unavailable to any of those seeking in any of those desires. So you can't go around and say, well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then I'll go home and meditate, is what? Is the practice. You have to patch up all those holes in your subtle. So the transmission can do the real work, so the realization can occur. It's not your mind that's going to realize you. It's all the obstructions that are there, present, and you're identifying with mind, that break up. So you have to let go of all mind to wake up. Everything you like, everything you don't like. All of it has to be let go of and accepted as the unreality that it is. And yet, realizers function with no drama and no trauma, and so they function simply and ordinarily, efficiently. No complaints.
More than efficiently. Yeah.
No complaints, right?
No.
You can see me do 10 things at once while you're still just remembering to pick up your umbrella.
Yes.
You've seen that over and over again. You see me take care of 10 people while each person can't even take care of their own simple needs. Okay? The transmission is going to go do the work of freeing your identification with the body-mind. Yeah. But you have to do the work of what? Preparing for
attention.
That. Yeah. You have to be responsible for your attention. And if you just say, well, enlightenment's good, but I should be able to think about some pleasurable things and fantasize about pleasurable things and get pleasurable things, and that should be all right. Enlightenment shouldn't be against that.
It's just all same.
That's a gray area kind of philosophy. Enlightenment's not against anything at all. But with that kind of thinking, you're creating holes, separation from enlightenment. So identifying with any quality of mind, high or low, is suffering. You have to get really clear about that. Mm-hmm. Once you're really clear, the process of transmission starts to go deep. And once you're clear about that. And so you have this self-protection device in you, that doesn't allow the transmission to go deep because you don't want that kind of freedom. You think that kind of freedom is too terrible and terrifying and awful. So enlightenment's a totally weird thing, isn't it? It's not a thing, but it's totally different than what the separate self sense and the personal I is thinking it is. It's not like that. What if you were sitting in the room and all sense of being different from everything in the room ends? There's no I thought forms, and there's no I thought that connects to anything. What would that be like? Well, that's perfect freedom.
You seem to recommend it, so I don't seem like it must be good.
You've had little hits of transmission where your mind slows down. You feel a kind of opening in your chest, and you feel relieved. Mm-hmm. and released a bit, and that feels really good. But what if that relief and release went completely, where you never got up and went back to... And why it feels like a nice release is because there was this before, that it was the tension and the contraction first. But what if you stay released? You have to be ready to live that way, see? And if you're not ready to live that way, you will try to tense back. You will try everything to tense back, and you will probably achieve it. So enlightenment is not, just something that everybody wants, is ready for, or would appreciate or like. It's just not that. So what good is it? Well,
It's truth.
the whole world is illusion. It's all mind forms, and they all have the consequence of suffering to it. And they all are impermanent, and they are not real. So would you really want to realize what's real, or stay in, that character in the Matrix? I know the steak's not real.
Cipher.
Cipher. It's not really real, but it tastes so good. I'll go for it. I'll be bound in a prison of being a battery just to have this fake sensation. That's what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
I'll be bound in identifying with this body-mind so I can have these nice sensations of being a body-mind. But you all live enough, so you live enough to repeat these sensations over and over again. Is that steak so good? Is that sex so wonderful? And everything that's wonderful also has an edge of consequence too. So here we are. So, I'd like to see some of you break through to do the transmission process now. But you can't get there from just almost being prepared or not quite being prepared. You have to be prepared. The level of inquiry that you do understand is to help you with the beginning preparation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the level of inquiry when you have seen mind for what it is and other people's mind, and you don't attach yourself to it anymore, because you are happy with staying located as consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Your ego doesn't want to run out of there like it's a fire in your house. Like, get me out of this house. It's consciousness. I'm located as consciousness, not as personal self. Get me out of this house. That's too free. It's too hot in here. Because it seems hot. It seems like a fire when you're standing there and all these mind forms are assaulting you and you want to identify with them, and they want, other people's minds want you to identify with mind. It seems like a hot fire in the beginning of being located here. It doesn't seem easy, see?
Okay.
But the transmission, there's also bliss in the transmission, and there's also fire in the beginning. But the preparation work helps you to enjoy the bliss, to stay located as consciousness, but there's that fiery work that's going to get done by the transmission, see? And if you can stay running without identifying as mind, as yourself, or the loss of mind as terrible adventure, then the work will be done. The transmission work will do its work. It won't seem so fiery as time goes on. It will just seem so true. And the clarity of that truth will seem so beautiful. So you won't feel like a bliss all through your body. You will just feel like the beauty and dignity of that clarity is just, like the most best done song or beautiful painting. It's just so clear. It's just clear. It deserves and is awe. And that's what you begin to experience as your experience and being free, see? So having no mind is not just sitting around and feeling like this heart chakra opening and you feel a bliss. It's not really that. There's an aspect to that, but it's that clarity that nothing is real, but what exactly is real is real. So in other words, the mind is and you're identifying with generating separate I in experience is not real. It frees you from all implication of all experience. So if I'm not going to past and future thoughts, what thought am I? I'm saying japa of my teacher. Because that's located as truth, as here, as the now, as true being. So So going to past and future thoughts is escaping out of that relationship, out of that locating. The more I say my teacher's name and say no to past and future thoughts, I am with my teacher as he is. And he is reality. He's not some guy who's personal self. So to have a teacher is easy to locate reality because they're right there in this form. They're the doorway there. So putting attention on this doorway, you're in the transmission of it. That's why it's so great to have a teacher. If your attention and regard is actually located on your teacher, then see that you're actually in the teacher's real transmission field of no mind. You are bringing them with you at your job, and you are living in their transmission of who they are, and that's not a personal self. For you to really have awakening realization, transmission process does have to occur. A lot of people think they can understand the concept of freedom, come across someone with authority and transmission of that, and then they have a moment where the mind feels released, and then they go home and say they're enlightened, but then the contraction, and they keep re-experiencing the release over again. In real enlightenment, you don't keep really experiencing the release over again. Once you're released forever. But what I'm staying clear about, and wanted to stay clear with you, is that preparation is preparation. You have to get to this stage for the realizing to occur. And that's the transmission part. Without that, it's just preparation. And faulty preparation at that, because real preparation would get you here.
Yeah.
So then that's why I come back and say, well, what's really going on in this part of your life? I know when you're with me, sometimes I correct you, and sometimes I might not be pleased with you, but in general, I can work with you. So what's going on here when I'm not with you? When you're sleeping in dreams, when you're at your job, when you're on a trip, what are you doing? What are you doing? And obviously there's big holes in different areas of people's lives still. So this preparation is not going to end. It's just going to be more preparation that never... And then the mind creates this gray area where somehow you are progressing, and that you are a deep spiritual aspirant because you've been at it for 20 or 30 years. And sometimes it takes a really long time to give up your seeking, because you really believe in your personal self so strongly, and you really believe what the rest of the world believes so strongly and adamantly, that you will live an experience and find a way to improve upon it to get happy. And even though as you get older, it's just a repetition of the same old stuff, and no one's getting happier, and everyone's just aging, and you're just going to die. But somehow, you want to still work on another strategy of how to make experience work out. So basically, we're living in a culture that you count on a certain amount of mental, emotional, and physical stimulation through different kinds of experience in foods or drugs or entertainment. And you can live your whole life distracted in these superficial levels of pleasure and say that's happiness, and then you just get older. But no one's happier when they get older. So the more pleasure you manage to control or have without too terrible consequences doesn't amount to great happiness more and more. It just doesn't go anywhere. And no one's coming to these conclusions. Because underneath everything, everyone's just afraid they're going to die.
Yeah. So they need their blanket.
Yeah. The guy does says you can't really love till you face death. You can't. So you'll always back off from real love because you're scared you're going to die. Because love requires sacrifice of your ego. And if you're afraid of death, afraid of your ego ending, you can't sacrifice it. So the question is, how prepared are you at this point, at this time, I don't know.
Have to tighten things up.
So if you feel that way and you can see what you have to tighten up and you want to, then you're ready. You're ready to do this preparation.